Hi, uh, this is Kate Olson, and I'm here on the Embrace Change radio website with Bill Protzmann, and we're about to do a soul talk. And we're going to talk about something you may not have heard of for a while. We're going to talk about chivalry and whether that's something that is relevant today and maybe why it should be. So before we get started, I'm going to have Bill introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself. And this is actually a topic that Bill has a strong interest in, and so maybe he can say, where this interest came from.
Kate, it's great to be here. Thank you so very much for offering us this time together and for bravely going off into an ancient practice as if it were something that was relevant today. I have all this stuff that I do, but for the purposes of our conversation, can I just show up today as like a guy who's like living in the world and may or may not have any good ideas, but would like to share the ones that I think are relevant?
Well, of course.
That'd be great. I mean, we sort of define ourselves in this world by what we do, and I'd rather, for our conversation, just be here as an authentic human being today.
Okay, well, that's great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people can look me up and all that, but um, this chivalry thing, is something that's deeply ingrained in my family. We're a Midwestern stiff upper lip, follow the rules, etiquette-based sort of heritage. And a lot of those rules have gotten blown away in the last few decades, or reinvented or tested in ways that are unusual. Obviously, you think of chivalry and knights and ladies and things like that, and the feminist movement has really opened up the potential in chivalry way beyond a gender-based thing. And when I was growing up, dad was still at the head of the table, that kind of thing, and the leader of the family. And I know there are a lot of women, especially single mothers these days, who are leading their families successfully. And a lot of these ancient practices, whether they're etiquette or chivalry or whatever, they still animate us as human beings. We like to be able to get along together. And the purpose, the ideas behind etiquette and chivalry are that these are ways that we do get along. And it's not anymore a gender-based thing, although it's so touching to me when a woman offers me some indication of respect, holds a door, says thank you. Uh, that for me is just, it's a gift, because I grew up so much the other way, that it was the man's role to do that. So even my own life, my archetype is getting expanded all the time of what's possible within our age today. And it's a beautiful thing. It really is wonderful.
Yes, I think there's actually kind of a duality to chivalry and how we see it. Um, on the one hand, I think when we think about being equal, when we think about, feminism and the role that in reality many women play today, that chivalry doesn't seem to have a place in it. On the other hand, I would say 80% of women have some feelings about that go the other way.
Sure.
Like it's why we, or a lot of women, like reading those romance novels or watching romantic movies, because there's some nostalgia for that old way of being.
This is so curious to me because, like you, I've been reevaluating the gender roles. My daughter came out to me when she graduated high school, and she's now married, happily married. And I see the interplay between my daughter and her wife as a very chivalrous thing. They express the qualities of courtesy and kindness and honesty um, and offering, you know, offering of your own gifts first. And these are amazing practices. I mean, the whole
Yeah,
thing about, you have to give before you can receive, that you could track that back to the chivalrous practices. So we're living today in a new expression of a very old practice and sort
yeah.
of reinventing it so that it fits within our society. But courtesy is a great thing. I don't like being cut off in traffic, and I'll
Well,
extend when I can, I'll extend some courtesy to another driver who seems like they're in a hurry or whatever, or smile and wave rather than getting all upset. Um, these practices have their roots in ancient chivalry.
yes. So, but maybe, just what you said about your daughter, and I've seen the same thing in, couples that I know that are not male, female, that maybe it isn't necessarily a male, female thing. Maybe it is more of a human to human thing.
That's well said. I believe you're right about that because there are times where uh, the knight in shining armor, your armor ain't so shiny,
Yes.
and your spear's broken, and you need the compassion and the loyalty of those around you to sort of pick yourself up and shine things up a bit and get back in the game. And that's not a male female thing. That's a that's a human kindness or human compassion kind of thing. And as we evolve our vision of chivalry from the old way it used to be, and knights and ladies, uh, to where we are today, it's possible for anyone, regardless of their gender, to assume either role.
Yes. And I think it's the intention behind it that really well, it determines how I feel about it personally. So other people maybe as well. Like I am all for people opening doors and uh, showing personal kindness to one another. But an instance stands out to me where the role part of it was more emphasized than the thought behind it. And
Right.
it was something I didn't like. I- I'll give the example just so it's more clear what I'm talking about. I was engaged for a short time to a man who was very insistent on playing those gender roles, and uh, got kind of upset if he wasn't able to. Like I remember walking into a building where I was ahead of him, and he practically knocked me over trying to get to the door to open it before me when I'm very capable of opening doors myself. And I reached for the door to open it, and another friend of his was with us, and he said to that friend, he said, "I haven't trained her well yet."
Oh, I'm sorry
And
that happened
it
to
was
you.
just like, oh no, this is not this is
No.
not good, because you know there wasn't kind intention behind that, and it just like threw practicality out the window. And to me, that's not the important part about it.
No, it goes beyond social norms. What what would be more effective was had your man said to you, Kate, can I get the door for you? You know, we have to create that sort of connection that allows us to fall into the roles. And then if you said, no, I've got it, that's fine. And if you said, no, could you please, I need that, I'd appreciate your help. Getting that dialogue going is one of the bits that's kind of missing here, especially if you're brand new at a practice of chivalry, especially in a gender role. But chivalry goes way beyond the gender roles that we like to think about, opening the door, walking on the street side, whatever. It's knights were people who were interested in things like fairness and justice. And we could use a little bit more fairness and justice in our world. Hello, people, and protecting the downtrodden. Look at the homeless situation that we have. And another interesting component of chivalry is avoiding scandal. You don't bring anything into your practice that causes question of your
Well,
character, you know? Those
yeah,
are those are parts of it. And you know, we're starting to recognize the importance of those things now as we deal
well,
with today's issues.
as I understood it, or what I see it as, you don't do things that are going to make another person feel bad or less than.
Beautiful said. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Even if it comes to holding the door,
Right.
you
Or,
know?
like what a model of that, or two models that I can think of that are Jacqueline Kennedy and Princess Diana.
Yes.
They
Yes.
were, I mean, uh, they would totally throw out social norms if it was going to make another person feel uncomfortable.
Now that is beautifully said. And of course, we have lots of, oh, well, social norms. Are there any social norms anymore? We like to make a
We are
sport out of
changing.
busting them, right?
Yes.
And sometimes that works. Um, and sometimes it doesn't. The notion that you can be fair or that you can be offer a compliment in a way that goes beyond words, I think is something that is necessary right now. I'm thinking about going to the grocery store today, and fortunately, I didn't need to buy toilet paper and paper towels, but those shelves are all decimated thanks to the coronavirus thing. So I've seen posts online where people are saying, "Gosh, you know, you don't need 3 months of toilet paper. If you were able to, you could buy a week's worth, for example, for your family, and that would leave enough toilet paper on the shelf for other people who are looking for the same
Well, you
supply, right?"
what's causing some of that is those people that are going out and buying, large quantities of something like toilet paper or hand sanitizer or whatever, and then trying to resell it at, a
Oh yeah, at a markup.
profit.
Well, this is not chivalrous, people.
No, it isn't. It isn't even nice. I mean,
And today I was able to find at least two stores had signs up that said limit one, but one store said, um, please purchase only what you need so that other people will be able to buy what they need too. And I thought, hooray, here's a
yeah,
little here's a little mark of chivalry that's sitting in the middle of this grocery store in, nowheresville, San Diego. And hooray for that, because that's the kind of thinking that's chivalrous thinking.
yes, or just plain kind. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah, being kind. Hello.
just considerate of other people.
This whole opening to other people that's sort of resulting from the pandemic right now is a beautiful thing to me, because when we isolate, we tend to forget that other people are out there and they're affected by who we are and what we do. And I've been
Yes.
I've been so privileged to watch my teenage stepdaughters grow up. And there's a point when you're growing up, and I remember this too in my own uh, teenage transition to adulthood. There's a point where it suddenly occurs to you that other people are impacted by who you are and what you do and what you say. And that was a huge wake-up call for me. And there are still times where I have to remember that. And I'll
Yes,
self-censor myself, before saying something or writing some angry blog. I'll just stop and say, no, it's good that you wrote this, Bill, but don't post it because, you know, first of all, that isn't really who you are as a person. It's an aspect of who you are, but it's not your best self.
yes.
And why offer less than your best self if you have a choice?
And there has been an attitude forming more and more of people, and it reminds me of something we had to learn as kids. Uh, but people that are totally adults that just plain want to get their own way and they don't care about anybody else. And that has gone to an extreme, like they want to get their own way no matter how they have to go about it. And cheating and things that we thought were, we were taught that you don't do this. This is not honorable.
Yes.
They think is okay now. And where has that come from? Because it wasn't part of our culture 30 years ago.
This
And
is,
what I am seeing now is, okay, this attitude that's come up, who's objecting to it? It's the really young people. They're saying, this isn't right. This isn't fair to me.
we've kind of reached the limit on me first kind of thinking. And I feel so deeply about that one, Kate, because when you put yourself ahead of somebody else with, even if you recognize that they're there and you cut in line, which happens all the time at places like Disneyland and whatnot, um, what have you really accomplished? You've put yourself in a place where you have assumed a position that doesn't belong to you,
Yes.
and you've disregarded another human being in the process. And whether you're leading a multi-billion-dollar organization and that characterizes how you work, or leading a family and that characterizes how you work, or you're just an individual trying to get to the front of the McDonald's line, the what it says about you isn't what's necessary anymore. We have this culture of individualism in the United States. I'm good with that, rugged individualism, whatever. But the thing that we've started to miss is that we're all in this together. And I can be rugged and individualistic, but if that hurts you, that also hurts me. And that ignorance, or perhaps the disregard of the other person,
Well,
is it's hurting us. It's killing us.
it's to me, it's become a bigger culture. Like, okay, I don't know what percent it really is, but statistically, 40% of our country thinks that majority shouldn't rule, that if there's a way for them to get their way, um, even if it's breaking rules and laws, that's okay.
Well, let's talk about Exhibit A right now, which is our fearless leader, Donald Trump. And I don't want to talk about politics or anything like that,
We don't
but
want to make it too political.
it's not about that. I mean, it's just about the man. Let's talk
Yes.
about the man. And there are other men we could talk about, but he's sort of in the public eyes. Um, I had the privilege of watching, I think it was a recording of the President and the First Lady arriving at Balmoral Castle, I believe, in England,
Mhm.
for one of their first state visits there. And they were met by the Prime Minister. Theresa May was there with her husband. And the British government had arranged this beautiful pageant for them. There was a marching band, and there were pipers, and there was pageantry, and just this whole thing. And a beautiful piece of music was played. So I'm into music, and I watch people respond to music regularly. And the President and First Lady arrived, and they came to the steps, and they were greeted, and they stood there while this pageant took place. And the camera, of course, was on the four of them in this place. And I watched with dismay, actually, how our president responded to this beautiful display in his honor, which was his response was clearly indifferent, like it was a waste of his time. Let's get on with the meeting. Let's do the business we came to do. And okay, I get that. I do understand that, if you're running the free world, you've got other things on your plate. But here was a moment where what was arranged to be inclusive and was arranged to be welcoming. And regardless of how anybody might feel about, Donald Trump, the British government was honoring the President of the United States in a very traditional way. One of the songs that was played was Amazing Grace.
Mm.
And I have never seen anyone listen to that song with such indifference and chagrin as I did that day watching that recording of our president in the beautiful pageantry and music that was offered in his honor. Maybe not in his honor, but offered to the office, And I just thought, oh my gosh. But it made it clear for me what we're dealing with here. There's a missing element of humanity that we can all learn. Whether or not we internalize it, there's ways of offering it as a practice that other people can see that we then realize that there's a human being inside there. And that the walls were up with Donald Trump that day. He didn't want anybody to look inside and see whatever was in there. In fact, it was almost like he was somehow affronted by the honor that was being shown to him, and that he was trying to resist the music that was offered. And this was a beautiful moment where there was no connection at all.
Yeah, well, I can't honestly explain his way of relating to things. I mean, he's
Right?
obviously
I mean, the very basics of etiquette aren't there.
yeah.
And for me to look at a leader in the world who isn't acting in a certain way, even the very basics of human dignity, uh, how is it that we can say that that's someone who is honorable? And pick anybody in history. I mean, we don't have to look, but we can look at Trump
Well,
because he's in office.
obviously, to 60% of us, we're just baffled.
Yeah, I can't figure it out.
But what what confuses me, or what I just don't understand, is how the other people, some of them I know, and some of them I'm even related to, who I know are basically good people, can say these kinds of things that he does and says are okay because it's getting us this that we want. Even though we know that 60% of you don't like this. It's our way of getting this.
It's that
And
me first thing again, I think, isn't it?
yeah, and it didn't used to be that way.
Yeah, it was you first.
Well, it was us first. It was
Yes, yes.
what is good for the majority, because that's what democracy is supposed to be about. I'm okay with something that I don't personally like being part of our laws or part of our society.
Sure,
If
like capital punishment or something.
Well,
I mean, I'm just picking an issue out of
yeah, my degree of acceptance, I'm going to accept it. I'm not going to try to subvert the system to get my way. I might go out and protest and try to convince people otherwise, but I'm not going to, like, say what Mitch McConnell has been trying to do, of, you know, filling the courts with conservative judges so that what, you know,
what, so you can get your way? I mean,
yeah, so that what the
what about,
minority of the country wants can be upheld while the majority doesn't.
we're fiddling here while Rome burns, you know? Um, the, it's even more obvious now, the power trips and the things that are, you know, like that's the focus of what's important in leading America right now, rather than where the focus needs to be, which is what's important for all of us that have to do this thing together. And here we are, you know, all sheltering in place, you know, for the most part. And we've sort of taken the authority away from the government and reassumed our role as human beings in society to protect one another and stay home. And, you know, the government's gotten around to saying that that's the right thing to do too, and that's helping other people to continue to do it, and that's great.
Well, the government is being forced to do
They're
that.
being forced. Yes, they're being forced to act ethically.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, if nothing else comes out of coronavirus, at least it's that.
Yes, maybe. We'll see how it all turns out.
We
Uh,
will.
I'm hoping that that turns out to be the silver lining in things, and it.
It kind of takes what it takes. And so I'm going to turn this back around on poor old Lancelot. The guy is an archetype of what it means to be a leader. And he got into trouble because he's a human being, as are all of us. You know, he couldn't be the perfect guy. He had to go and, you know, have an affair with the queen, which ended everything. I mean, just made it terrible and worse and whatever. But he was like the number one guy. And until that happened, everything was fine. So recognizing our humanity and our limits is part of chivalry too. And being able to own your limits is a really, really important part of this, where you can say, you know what, that dragon, I just can't do it. It's not for me. You know,
Hmm.
here I've bested all of the other tests on my quest. I walked barefoot on the sword across the chasm, you know, and defeated all the other lesser knights, and here I am in front of the dragon, and you know what? It's not going to happen. This is the end for me.
Hmm.
And there's a wonderful old movie about this that's like 4 hours long, people. So go ahead if you want to see it. You can see it on YouTube. It's called El Cid, or it's spelled CID, El Cid, some people say. And marvelously acted. Sophia Loren is in. I think Gregory Peck plays the the Cid. It's a true story from Spain. But this is what happens when chivalry runs amok. And when you give yourself so completely to your cause that you disappear, your humanity is gone. Uh, I won't give away the end of the movie, but basically it's one of those you ride off to your death kind of movies. And you do it because of the bigger cause. And I think our challenge is somehow to navigate between our humanity that wants to be, you know, the Lancelot who falls in love with the queen when he shouldn't, and the Cid who is given up everything, including his wife and family, to ride off into battle because he believes so strongly in the cause. Somewhere between those two extremes are all of
Yes.
us.
And I think maybe right now we're in the process of developing a new, like a new chivalry or a
Yeah.
new set of norms for dealing with one another, whether it's, you know, male, female, or just human to human.
authentic, vulnerable. It's very difficult to feel safe with one's vulnerability these days,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the face of such crazy, just anybody's rules go in the rush toward greed or power. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
how do you deal with that? Being more vulnerable in the face of incredible power and ridiculous greed, that seems like a suicide mission.
Yes. Yeah. Something that I found, did he really say that on national TV? Was somebody asked the president last night why, people with money and privilege were getting uh, the coronavirus tests and other people that desperately needed them were not. And he said, well, he didn't know if it was, if that was the reason, but maybe that was just, how life was. And and
Yeah.
yeah.
So what would the chivalrous response be? I mean,
Well,
we can use this as an object lesson. So what would the the just or fair or
I don't know. I think another president would have said something like, that shouldn't be happening. I'll check into that. I'll, you know, work on it, whatever.
the one I'm looking for is, you know what, people, and this, we're never going to get this the way we should, but the response I'm looking for is, you know what, we waited too long to respond and we didn't have enough resources already in place,
Oh,
even
well,
though we knew we should have.
he
So
gives
that's
himself
for
an
me.
A on the response so far, so
Yeah.
he can't say that. But yeah.
But that's the chivalry that I look for. Whether that's coming from the President of the United States or one of my customers. Um, one of the tough things about chivalry is taking responsibility for your mistakes. And I've had to own some big ones and sit in
Yeah.
front of customers and say, you know what, I messed up. This is what happened. This is how bad it is. And here's my plan for recovery. I really want to help you with that, but I completely respect your decision. If you want to just toss me out right now and fix it on your own, please use my plan. And in every one of those cases, Kate, it's it's set me at a place of authentic honor that would not have been possible if I'd tried to point the fingers or blame somebody or take some other action that was less than chivalrous. And
Yes,
it's hard to
that
do.
is so true. Well, so we're almost out of time. I try to keep these relatively short, and I have to actually today because I have an appointment. So, what last thing would you like to say about chivalry before we go?
The real power in chivalry is love. And if you're a person who says that you love, you deserve to have chivalrous practices because they will enliven your practice of love and everyone around you will feel it.
Yes. And if I know that you've written an article on chivalry, if people wanted to read that, where could they find it?
It's on Your Tango. May I send you a link to it?
Well, I have the link if you could tell
Oh,
the
yeah. So
possible listeners.
yourtango.com is a great site for relationships, advice, all kinds of things there. There's millions of articles on it, and there's lots of people who contribute. So yourtango.com, and if you just search for chivalry, you'll find a few articles, and mine's one of them.
Okay. Well, I read it, and so if you're interested in this topic, I'd recommend it, and I hope you got something out of our talk today. We did go in a lot of different directions. So thank you for listening, and thank you for being here with me today, Bill.
Thank you, Kate. Many blessings.
All right. So goodbye for now.